What's going on, my creatures of the night? Today, we're going to change things up a bit. I do fan bases, I do top tens of a lot of different things. But this channel is mainly music centric. But I'm gonna, I'm gonna be flat out honest. I'm gonna add some more topics to this channel. There's a lot that I can offer different fans, if I have any fans. Um, as you guys may or may not know, or you can tell by my shirt, I'm a huge wrestling fan. I've been a huge wrestling fan my whole life. I grew up in between the Attitude Era and the Ruthless Aggression Era, and I've just always grown up with wrestling. It's always been in my family, or like just wrestling fan. Being a wrestling fan has always been a part of my family. My dad was into it, my uncle was into it, even my grandfather back in the '80s during the golden days. So today I'm going to do my top 10 favorite WWE superstars of all time to kick off the wrestling series. I'm going to call it. Today's a Tuesday, but how about from here on out I do WWE Wednesdays or something like that. I'll think of something, but there will be a playlist on my channel for WWE videos. There'll probably be top tens or rants about the wrestling business. So we're gonna get started with number 10 right now. Number 10 is Edge. Edge was fantastic from his debut days all the way up until he had retired. I've always been a big fan of his character evolution as well as his in-ring work. Edge has been part of some of the greatest WWE matches I've ever seen through really all parts of his career. Some of the latter matches or TLC matches that he has been part of, whether it's in his early career or his later career, are phenomenal. Heck, even his pre-debut promos, those video clips of him walking around New York with the creepy blue lighting and the creepy narrations were so cool at the time. Later in his career, he went on to have great matches and great title runs, and he worked some really good feuds with guys like John Cena, Mick Foley, Undertaker, Triple H. The list goes on. It's a shame he had to retire due to injuries. He's a guy I truly miss in the ring, and he is an extremely talented performer. Number 9, Jeff Hardy. What can I say about the Extreme Enigma? This guy was honestly the coolest, most popular wrestler at the time I was growing up, even before that. Like Edge, he's been part of some phenomenal ladder matches, TLC matches, steel cage matches even. Honestly, some of the things that Jeff Hardy can do, even now, during his TNA run, is phenomenal. He's such a unique performer who's got sort of his own beat going on compared to other wrestlers, but fans have always loved that about him. I will say he's had his share of not-so-good moments or matches, probably due to the influence of drugs or whatever. Let's not talk about Victory Road 2011 or him in general in 2003. But almost every wrestler has had their share of good and bad matches. Hardy is definitely the more interesting and more popular one of the Hardy Boys. And I think one of the greatest moments for me growing up as a wrestling fan was seeing him win the WWE title in 2008. It was awesome. Number 8, Eddie Guerrero. The late Eddie Guerrero. He's a wrestler that will truly be missed, even 10 years after his death. Eddie was a great performer who had a real passion and desire for the business. He knew how to make the fans hate him, he knew how to make the fans love him. He knew when to be funny, and he knew when to get serious. He always gave his absolute best in the ring, no matter what. Like, he had this incredible work ethic for when it came to in-ring ability. And sadly, he was taken away from us way too soon, and the WWE involved him in some pretty bad angles long after his death, with Rey Mysterio and Randy Orton, but aside from that, he will always be remembered. Number 7, Val Venis. Might be a little surprised. I actually think Val Venis is an extremely underrated wrestler. Back in the late 90s at least. Unfortunately, he grew way out of touch in the 2000s. But around 1998, 1999, he was a great performer, and his character was fantastic for the Attitude Era. People looked at him and they knew they wanted to be that, you know? Who doesn't want to be Val Venis in the 90s? With PG television being shoved down our throats now, unfortunately, I don't think you'll ever see another character like Val Venis. But I feel like he played that character like nobody else really could. Sadly, I will admit he was part of a couple really bad angles, but all in all, he had a really cool character that, as a guy, you know, you'd want to be. He was a very underrated performer during the Attitude Era up until the year 2000. He was in some pretty good matches. Number 6 is Triple H. Love him or hate him, Triple H is the game, he's the king of kings, and he's deserved all the success he's gotten. Triple H is a very hard worker with an excellent work ethic and a huge passion and love for the business. And no, marrying Stephanie McMahon did not make Triple H a megastar. Triple H was already a champion and a top heel in the company long before he met Stephanie McMahon. I will admit Triple H has been part of some really, really bad angles or storylines and even matches during 2003 and 2004, but he's always been a pure badass in and out of the ring. This is a guy who continued wrestling. He took a Walls of Jericho with a torn quad. That takes passion, man. I've pulled my leg muscle before and I couldn't even walk, so that takes a lot of passion and desire. His character is also pretty awesome. He comes out with the Motorhead playing his theme song. He's got the leather jacket and the sledgehammer. It's metal, man. It's great. And the fact that he's friends with Lemmy is just bonus, really. I've always been a big fan of Triple H, and if you're not down with that, I've got 2 words for you. Moving on. Number 5, Stone Cold Steve Austin. Speaking of badass, Stone Cold Steve Austin, man. This guy was a huge draw during the Attitude Era, and he always knew how to get the crowd going. He was the guy that everybody wanted to be. Everybody wanted to stick it to their boss and, like, you know, make their boss's lives living hells. You know, this was the guy who actually stood up to the boss. You know, he was ruthless. I mean, he was funny at times, but most of the time he was pretty ruthless. And he was a very hard worker. I will say his heel run in 2001 was not what anyone expected, but his run as a babyface was always super intriguing. And I will say his in-ring work isn't the main factor that makes wrestling fans love him. It's more of his character and the storylines he was in and the segments that he was a part of. And although he has been in some fantastic matches, obviously, he is one of the sparks for the Attitude Era. And it was cool to see what he would do on Raw every week, you know. He was the guy that changed the wrestling business in 1998. Number 4, Kane. Kane is, I've said, like I've mentioned with other wrestlers before, Kane has been thrown around between good storylines and some pretty bad storylines, much like Triple H. But Kane is another example of an extremely hard worker. He also doesn't complain. He stayed loyal to the WWE no matter what they throw him in. You know, Katie Vick, Lita's Baby, Corporate Kane. You know, he's worked through all of it. And his character, as a child, his character was terrifying for me. But that's what you want as a fan. You know, he's supposed to be terrifying, and he delivered on that. You know, he had the mask, he spoke through that voice machine thing, and he destroyed everyone he got in the ring with. And not to mention the backstory behind his debut was so dark yet so awesome. Kane is evil and sadistic, and, well, he was. And that's what I loved about him, really. Number 3, Chris Jericho. Jericho. Chris Jericho's a genius when it comes to connecting with the fans. He's another guy who can make you love him or hate him, and every angle or storyline he's in, or every character he's portrayed, he has managed to keep the core that is Chris Jericho, but add new elements, you know, different characters mixed into that Chris Jericho personality. You know, and he's given his all into it. Like, he lived those, whatever he was put into. and he's been part of some amazing matches as well as amazing storylines. His rivalry with Shawn Michaels in 2008 is probably one of my favorite rivalries of all time. Jericho is extremely underrated. I mean, he can be comical, he can be despicable, and not to mention his returns are always way over the top, which is so cool. Especially in 2007 when you'd see random number screens come up in the middle of Raw weeks prior to his return. Jericho in general, he's awesome. Number 2, The Undertaker. The Undertaker, the Lord of Darkness, the Phenom. I could go on about The Undertaker for hours. But I'll keep things simple. The Undertaker has fought through so much, man. He's been so loyal to the WWE for 25 years, which is amazing. He has worked through injuries and anything that's gotten in his way. And his character evolution has always been awesome. He's always been able to stay relevant. Whether he was the creepy old Western Undertaker or the Lord of Darkness, Ministry of Darkness, or even the badass biker dude, it was always super cool to me seeing that character evolution because he always went with the times, but he was always able to keep that darkness that is the Undertaker. Undertaker has also been part of some really, really phenomenal matches. Some of the greatest matches and feuds that I've ever seen. Like his match with Shawn Michaels at WrestleMania 25 is my favorite match of all time, really. Not to mention Undertaker's feuds always have tremendous build-up, although there's been the bad angles and matches here and there, usually not Undertaker's fault though. But Undertaker will always go on to be one of the greatest WWE performers of all time, and I have a ton of respect for him. Number 1, Shawn Michaels. Shawn Michaels, in my opinion, is the greatest WWE superstar of all time. He had the character, the mic skills, the in-ring work, the ability to be a convincing heel or babyface. He had it all, man. And he's been in some really amazing matches. I must say, every match that he has worked, he's given his best. He's like, you could stick him in the ring with a guy like Shelton Benjamin, and he'll put on an amazing match. He's really able to tell a story in that ring, which is fantastic. He's a fantastic worker, and he's honestly deserved everything he's worked for. Personality-wise, outside of the ring, here in the 90s, he was a bit of a douchebag, but I'm not really focusing on who these guys are outside of the ring, more towards what they are inside of the ring. And Shawn Michaels was extremely popular around 95, 96, and he was in some really good matches. And he was the guy that Vince wanted to be the top guy, and he delivered on that at one point in the 90s. And he's Shawn Michaels, man. He knows how to bring emotion to the ring. He knows how to bring good in-ring work. Everything. He's got it all. So yeah, Shawn Michaels is my number 1 favorite WWE superstar of all time. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes my top 10 favorite WWE superstars of all time. Let me know what your top 10 favorite WWE superstars of all time by commenting in the comment section below. And I want to know your guys' opinion. Or I want to know my creatures' interests, if they are interested in wrestling. But there is more to come about wrestling in the future. I'm going to create some really good top 10s for the future, or just really good wrestling rants, because I am a wrestling fan, and I do want that to be a part of this channel in some way, whether it's as a weekly series or as just a little playlist or something I do every now and then. But yeah, I look forward to it for sure. And thank you guys for watching. Rock on.